Hello, this is Jake, and this is Jake Reads Comics, and I'm Jay Cohen. As always, brought to you by the comic made by Ray Griffith and I, Astounding Tales. And today's comic is Superman Annual 11 for the Man Who Has Everything. This was published in 1985. This was the second to last annual before the Man of Steel, John Byrne's reboot of Superman, or essentially the DC universe getting rebooted after Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this is a pre-Crisis Bronze Age Superman. It's a very cool issue. For those not familiar, or may already be familiar before reading the comic when they saw it. This one of the best adaptations of some DC source material, the Justice League Unlimited adaptation that was in 2004, and it's also noted or stands out as one of the few, if not only, adaptation that Alan Moore actually approves of his work. For various reasons, he's usually pretty salty about the adaptations of his work. Sometimes it's due to quality reasons, or in the case of, let's say, V for Vendetta, more so changing the themes from Thatcher's England to being kind of talking more about a post 9/11 war on terror, George Bush's America, or in the case of Watchmen, a discrepancy over rights. This also stands out in terms of Alan Moore's canon and also just comics history, and this being 1985. This is the year before Watchmen begins to get published, also a collaboration between Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. So we get a little sneak peek of, I guess, the collaboration that will soon kind of change comics, or at least superhero comics, or American superhero comics for years to come. So we open up in Krypton. Again, this is a pre-crisis story. So this is the Silver Age, Bronze Age Krypton before John Byrne kind of changes the depiction, the art style of Krypton. And then we see Clark is living a life on Krypton. And now we cut to outside the Fortress of Solitude. One of my favorite lines of the comic, with Jason Todd, the latest Robin, meeting Wonder Woman for the first time, and Batman telling him, "Think clean thoughts, chum." So Robin kind of being introduced to this wider world. This is, of course, before he will be Jason Todd will be blown up, but also I guess I believe that it was also post-crisis. His origin may have changed. I don't know if the character changed that much, but so we get the pre-crisis Jason Todd before they blow up via 1-900 number, the post-crisis Jason Todd. So coming into the Fortress of Solitude to celebrate Superman's birthday, and that's who the title is alluding to. What do you get for the Man Who Has Everything? Julie Schwartz, legendary Silver Age, Bronze Age editor, Dave Gibbons, and Alan Moore. So this is a kind of a comic in terms of like genealogy or importance of DC Comics, and just a great story in general. We see it come across, seeing in the foreground, what we will learn will be the Black Mercy. It's a plant that gives you your heart's desire. So it's not that you can't rip it off, it's that you really don't want to. They don't know that yet. They come across catatonic Superman. Of course, that's worrisome. Cut back to Krypton again, And I think that's one of the things that's noting is that in a year or two, this depiction of Krypton is going to go away. This has been the depiction of Krypton for over 2 decades. And so we see Jor-El was wrong about the country, the world blowing up. So this is kind of what that, I guess, Superman's subconscious of what that would be like. Also, in terms of how Superman interacts with Krypton and how he views his Kryptonian heritage, differs quite a bit in the pre-crisis and post-crisis iterations of Superman. Byrne made it more of Superman discovering the mysteries of who he is, kind of similar to the Richard Donner film, where the pre-crisis Superman was very well acquainted with his Kryptonian heritage, his Kryptonian culture, history, and the comic in general. Whereas with in the John Byrne version or iteration of Superman or vision of Superman, he's truly he tries to emphasize that American way, that he's despite being born of Krypton, you can really say he's a child of Earth, of Kansas. That's really who all his memories are, really from his birth. And then when he gets older, he then comes upon and learns about his Kryptonian heritage. Whereas with the pre-crisis Superman, very early on, he's aware of this Kryptonian heritage and has a much greater knowledge of it and immersion in it. And we're not introduced, but I guess in this comic, in this issue, Mongul is Bronze Age villain. I believe Starlin, Jim Starlin villain, and that kind of, you get that vibe that he kind of the dude that invented Thanos, which is kind of, let's be honest, Thanos is cool, but he's kind of riffing on Darkseid. And well, if you're going to riff on superhero comics, why not, do it on a great Kirby creation? Then we got Mongul's kind of riff on a riff on a riff, like it's a Xerox of a Xerox, but he's still pretty cool looking, pretty imposing, especially when you got Dave Gibbons drawing him. And that's something I made a note of and definitely want to mention, not specifically Dave Gibbons, obviously he's amazing, but that Alan Moore really is a great writer. And when you look at the list of all-time great comics, he's got a number of them, but his collaborations, and I think as a artist, or rather a writer, that might be one of your necessary to be one of the more important strengths is to how are you as a collaborator, and that's something two of my favorite writers have in common, Chris Claremont and Alan Moore. They almost have a superpower of recruiting, collaborating with the best artists. And I made just a quick list regarding Moore, and this is just kind of like off the top of my head. There are probably artists I'm forgetting, but you got Dave Gibbons, David Lloyd, of course, V for Vendetta, Kevin O'Neill, stuff like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Brian Boland, stuff like The Killing Joke, and then, of course, Stephen Bissett and John Totleben on Swamp Thing. Just amazing artists, and Moore is a great collaborator. Those collaborations have made some amazing stories. I guess we get some great Wonder Woman action. The world of Krypton that Superman is inhabiting, and maybe this is his subconscious fighting it, is not really a perfect place. Riots, Kara Zor-El is attacked in the streets, but he has a close relationship with Van. And I think that the context of that this is a pre-crisis Superman is important in terms of his desire to be a Kryptonian. That this version of Superman, again, had a much more deeper knowledge of Kryptonian culture, Kryptonian history, and really feeling a child of two worlds, of both Earth and Krypton. So he really had a much more of a longing of what he missed, of his world destroyed. Whereas with the post-crisis Superman, while this is still a tragedy in that context, he did not learn he's a Kryptonian until he was an adult. He was born and raised in Kansas. Those are his only memories. And then he learns of his Kryptonian heritage. So in terms of like a longing, a desire for what is lost, that's really something he's never known. While this Superman, this iteration, really does have a longing for that. In the Byrne Superman, Ma and Pa Kent are still alive. In this version of Superman, Ma and Pa Kent are long since deceased, or not long since, but since he's been adult, they've been deceased. So he has that less of an anchor to Earth. So I think that just adds that historical context. It kind of is important to the reading of this narrative, of the story. Cool giant gun, foreshadowing where comics will go, Image Comics and the like. But cool sci-fi canon. I don't know. It's a little things in life. It's a cool laser. You really get the sense that it's a massive beam. But it's an imposing, Goliath coming forth, and you can't stop it. But just really the proportions here. Jor-El, not such a good dude, even though this is supposed to be what Superman, his heart's desire, but it's going awry. So maybe that could be read again as a subconscious fighting it, that things are not perfect. We got this cool reference to the Kandor creator, and this in this alternate history Krypton, Kandor was still shrunken by Brainiac, but this is really the pathos here, and this scene they really capture well in the animated adaptation. Well, but Van, I don't think you're real. Dave Gibbons really captures the heartbreak, and that's also that's something in terms of I guess any visual storytelling or any illustrator, regardless of superhero comics or any genre, quote unquote the acting, being able to show different faces and different emotions, but specific with the superhero genre, an artist may not typically, if you're doing, an action comic that's just like, let's say The Punisher, you may be doing just a lot of grimaces. But that in a superhero comic, you may not really have to show some type of anguish and crying and this type of pathos and emotion. But when you do it, an artist that does have that tool in his toolbox, you could really tell some amazing stories in the superhero genre, besides the typical smash, punchy, and also cool science fiction stories, etc. Batman's trying to pull it off, but lands on him, and of course his heart's desire. Everyone knows his father fighting off that gunman that day, or that fateful night in Crime Alley. Now, Alan Moore writes a good story, but really Dave Gibbons, and I say this in terms of these videos are brought to you by Astounding Tales, and I'm the scribe in Astounding Tales. I'm far from an artist. I can't draw really much of anything. I said if it's up to me to draw Astounding Tales, it would be just a comic full of Pac-Man, dicks, and stick figures. But Dave Gibbons, I feel, really elevates a story. The kind of panel like this, you feel the kind of the explosive power and rage going from this panel to this panel. And then even here, the speed, the explosiveness of Superman. I believe it's the DeLuca effect. But Jason Todd, even though he would later get blown up by the fans, burned. Yeah, this is a rad comic. I failed to mention this is the hardcover for The Man Who Has Everything. Again, taken another book from in the videos for this channel. That's been from the public library. I do have a personal copy of this, not this in floppies, not the annual, but in the trade paperback, the DC Universe, The Stories of Alan Moore. This is definitely a nice copy for The Man Who Has Everything, but I highly recommend the trade paperback, The Stories of Alan Moore, or the DC Universe, The Stories of Alan Moore. So you get all the stories featured in here, the Swamp Thing Superman story, this annual for The Man Who Has Everything, and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. That's this hardcover. You also have that in the trade I was just mentioning, plus stuff like Tigers, or you get a bunch of cool short stories, stuff like Tigers, which is where you get Sodom Yet, where Alan Moore sneaks the word sodomy by with the naming of a Green Lantern, and just interesting stuff that once Alan Moore left DC, they would continue to mine stuff, not just these bigger stories, but much more so even in these little short stories, these Green Lantern short stories. See different characters and concepts that kind of similar to Kirby's Fourth World, DC would continue to dine on for decades to come, which I don't know if that necessarily reflects well on the creativity or what maybe is allowed to get done at DC Comics. But at any rate, you've got Jason Todd using Jason Todd with the Mongols gauntlets, really coming through in the clutch. As a kid who grew up with the, I was a kid during I was a Death of Superman kid. The Reign of Superman I thought was great at the time. Had the trade, The Death of Superman, had the comic and the black plastic, the white plastic, the whole nine. But really, in terms of a knockdown, drag out fight, first of all, this panel I think is perhaps in, or maybe it's not this panel. What this kind of reminds me of is when they had those soldiers trying to kind of aid Superman in the Death of Superman, and they were like using those flight packs and like shooting rays at Doomsday. But this might be a cooler fight. Anyway, these few panels might be kind of cooler, like I guess the choreography, you got them in different, almost kind of got like a mixed martial arts vibe going on here. Superman doing the ground and pound, smashing through see them actually like smashing through the Fortress of Solitude. Anyway, Superman's got the upper hand, really kicking the hell out of Mongol, but seeing his mother and father, reminding him of Krypton, distracts him, letting Mongol kind of get the jump on him. But Jason Todd coming through in the clutch. You see Mongol's Heart's Desire. And then he rips the Kryptonian's head from his shoulders, laughing at the way the eyes roll for long seconds after death. Then he places up on a spike, goes out to trample worlds, carrying it before him, his hideous standard. And, Superman's going to drop him in a black hole. We'll see what you get for the Man Who's Everything. Cool representation of Kandor. Because I think by this time, I guess, was Kandor blown up? That's a good, if someone, the long decades of Superman continuity around 1985, if someone wants to maybe put in the comments, well, what was the status of Kandor? Be much appreciated. This looks like the Brainiac, the pre-crisis, late Bronze Age Brainiac, which I mentioned, Whatever Happened to the Man Tomorrow. I really like that design. He didn't really last that long, but when I was a small child, that design definitely captured my imagination. Superman and Diana kissing. Why don't we do that more often? I don't know. Too predictable. So that's kind of also kind of neat, you know. She's kind of I guess the Greeks get saucy, you know, for his birthday, you know. Not really anything kind of overly serious, more playful, but like, hey, you know, we're here to party, have a good time. And and then you got this cool Dave Gibbons, got the key to the Fortress of Solitude. Obviously, how do you get into the Fortress of Solitude? You need this massive key, so only a Superman could lift this massive key. So it doesn't matter that it's obvious the spot. You know, who could lift a key like that? So that was I don't know if in current Superman continuity that's how you get in the Fortress of Solitude, but for decades, for the Silver Age and Bronze Age Superman, that's how you got in there. So that's for the man who has everything. So done a lot of Superman heavy videos lately. I think we'll be doing some definitely some different stuff, but you know, Superman I think gets a bad rap, but he kind of invented the genre. So to just do some cool Superman content, and also obviously Alan Moore, Dave Gibbons, and then before that it was the Alan Moore, Kurt Swan, and you know, some cool Alan Moore comics. Alan Moore is definitely one of my faves. So there is in the out of the edition of the deluxe edition of Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. All right. Thanks for watching, and as always, is brought to you by Stony Tales.